Chapter 37. After he flew away, Miss Adderstone and Edna left too. But before they went, they sacked Miss Trinkleberry, and they told her to never come back. They said they wanted to be nice to children from now on, and that us children didn't want grown-ups bossing us around. So they said it would be happier for us all if they went. Molly remembered the instructions she had given Adderstone and Edna at the airport and felt like groaning. "But Miss Trickleberry was nice," insisted Jinx. "Yeah, but she did what Adderstone told her and left all the same. Then Miss Adderstone packed her cases, and so did Edna, and they had an argument 'cause Miss Adderstone snipped some of Edna's clothes. She cut up Edna's coat," said Ruby, "and both of her hats," added Jinx. "Yeah, and they looked silly when they went away, with their clothes all snipped. Edna gave us some candies, except they were funny ones with horrid stuff in them. That was kind of Italian grown-ups candies," explained Gemma. "They were both nice to us before they went, though. Miss Adderstone gave me a bag of mothballs, and she gave me a big bottle of mouthwash," said Jinx. "But you were naughty, weren't you, Jinx?" Gemma reminded him. "Yeah, I drank it." Lucky ruffled Jinx's hair. "Anyway," Gemma continued, "Miss Adderstone said food and groceries would keep being delivered and paid automatic by the bank. And she said we must keep going to school or else Miss Toadley would come here. So we had to pretend Miss Adderstone and Edna were still here, so no one outside knew they'd gone." "And where did they go?" asked Molly. "I don't know. Then what happened? Well, then Hazel took over. And she was so much worse than Adderstone," whispered Jerry. "She was horrible and bossy," continued Gemma. "And she made us work so hard. We had to cook and clean, and she said we had to look really tidy for school, or else Miss Toadley would guess we was here on our own. And Hazel left her room and moved up to Miss Adderstone's old room, and she threw lots of paper out the window. She said Roger and Gordon can go in Edna's room, and then they all started arguing," said Gemma. "And Roger wanted to be in charge 'cause he said Hazel was too bossy, and Gordon wanted Edna's room all to himself. So Roger and him had a fight, and Roger had to go up to the sanatorium room." Gemma and Jerry were talking very quickly and animatedly, and Ruby and Jinx were watching them with wide eyes. Molly and Rocky realized how disturbing the last few weeks had been. "Yeah, and then they all shouted at us and bossed us around, but they never helped," said Ruby. "And then they argued so much that they stopped talking to each other. And us. They stopped talking to us," said Jinx. "Most of the time," Gemma remembered. "Sometimes they'd get really cross with us if we answered the phone. Or the door. And Hazel was very strict. She said we mustn't tell anyone that Adderstone left. She said if we told, Gordon would hit us. But now it's okay because it's the Christmas holidays and school's finished. So we don't have to be clean anymore. But we don't get school lunches now, so we're hungry. And we can't go to the village or the town. Never," said Jinx. "Or they said the boogeyman would get us." "Well, you mustn't worry about that," said Molly. "The boogeyman's just rubbish." Molly looked about her. Her surroundings were more like a garbage dump than a room in a house. Hockey sticks and deflated footballs were kicked into corners, along with cardboard boxes and plastic bags. A few saucepans with moldy insides lay about, and the walls had been splattered with black ink. "So where are the others now?" "Probably asleep," said Gemma, sipping her drink. "At 10 Roger gets up. He goes foraging in the Briarsville garbage bins. But Gordon and Cynthia and Craig don't go out. They stay in Edna's room, watching TV. And Hazel stays in her room, except she does come downstairs for her special deliveries. She takes the boxes back to her room. Well," concluded Molly, turning to Lucky, "I think it's time we woke Hazel and the others up, don't you?" The door to Adderstone's old apartment was shut. A huge black beetle crawled out from under it. Petula sniffed nervously at the air, detecting a faint smell of the old spinster. Molly looked at Miss Adderstone's portrait that hung on the wall. Someone had given her a mustache and a beard. Molly knocked at the door and pushed, and the door swung open. She and Rocky entered. The place smelled stuffy and rank. Miss Adderstone's black old parlor was even darker than usual, with the heavy wine-colored curtains shut. Molly switched on a light. Boxes, discarded cans, and files from Miss Addison's cabinet were dropped everywhere. Empty potato chip packets and piles of candy wrappers littered the floor like dry autumn leaves. From the darkness on the wall, the cuckoo clock opened and cuckooed 9 times. "Who is it?" came Hazel's groggy voice from the bedroom. Rocky and Molly crunched over the debris on the floor and opened the door. In the semi-darkness, they saw Hazel sitting up in the bed. Molly stepped through more rubbish and pulled the curtain cord. Light flooded into the room, hitting Hazel in the face. She shielded her eyes and whined, "Get out, Gemma. No one's supposed to come in here." "It's not Gemma. It's Molly and Rocky," said Molly. Hazel's hand dropped from her face. Then she revealed a very different Hazel from the one Molly had seen. This Hazel had a much paler, spottier face. Her eyes were bloodshot, with dark white rings around them. Her lips were crusty, with cold sores around their edges. Her hair was longer because it hadn't been cut, and stuck to her head because it was so greasy. She also had the look of a mad person. She clutched a pillow. Oh no. I'm dreaming," she panted hoarsely. "No, you're not. We're back. And this might seem like a nightmare to you, but we're staying," said Molly. The old Molly would have jumped out of bed and challenged Molly. But this Hazel simply whimpered. Then she reached for a cardboard box behind her bed and took a heaven bar from it. She unwrapped the chocolate and frantically crammed it in her mouth. "Gotta have a sugar hit," she said, biting a chunk off, concentrating on the chocolate. All of a sudden she seemed to have forgotten that Rocky and Molly were in the room. "Hazel," said Molly, "you look terrible." "Yeah, I know," said Hazel, biting a second chunk. "You look ill. Have you been eating only candy?" "Yeah, there's nothing better to eat," said Hazel, her eyes darting desperately about the room, at the boxes and boxes of chocolate bars. Then she suddenly looked petrified. "You're not going to take my candy away, are you?" "No," said Molly, "but we got some better food for you. Would you like some omelet and French fries?" After Rocky had fetched some proper food and Hazel had devoured it, Rocky and Molly talked to her. She told them how everything had gone wrong. She told them she'd enjoyed being in charge at first, but then, after her fights with Gordon and Roger, she started to spend more time alone, eating only chocolate and candy. She'd even smoked a pack of cigarettes that she'd found in Miss Adderstone's cabinet, and had been violently sick. She confessed that she felt tired and ill and alone, and finally she started to look at herself. "I felt bad-tempered all the time, and I tried to feel better, but I couldn't. And I wanted to have good feelings for other people, but they wouldn't come. I just hated everyone, and I hated myself for being so full of hate. And I'm a liar." Hazel threw her for a green file on the side table and threw it to Molly. "You should know who I am. I always lie to everyone. Read it. Go on. Read it." She sank back in the pillows behind her, with tears in her eyes. "There's no point in hiding anymore." Inside, the green folder was Hazel's record. Molly and Rocky started to read. "Name: Hazel Hackersley. Date of birth? Question mark. Place of birth? Question mark. How came to Hardwick House? Parents donated money to Hardwick House. A nanny dropped child off. Parents: actors. Life too busy to accommodate child. Possessions: none. Description of child. Hazel reminds me of myself as a kid. She is quick to learn and eager to please." "See," moaned Hazel, "I never was the glamorous kid you all thought. You thought I had the best parents ever, but my parents never loved me." Hazel's eyes brimmed over with tears. "I was jealous of you because you had Miss Trinkleberry. She was like a mum to you, too, but not to me. I came too late. I never had a mother, just a string of nannies." "But," said Molly, "Miss Trinkleberry would have loved you too. You just never let her." "But I'm a horrible," sobbed Hazel. "I know no one likes me. I don't blame you. I don't like myself. I'm bad. And it's not a nightmare you coming back. I don't care about being in charge anymore. I don't want to run this place. I'm sick. I just want to get better. I want to be better. Hazel's face crumpled up into a desperate mass of furrows and creases, and her mouth opened. No noise came out of it. A silent cry was there, though, and tears streamed down her cheeks. Molly put her hand on Hazel's shoulder. It's okay, Hazel. Please don't cry. We understand. Thanks for showing us your file. You should have seen mine. It made out I was a real nobody. We'll help each other now. From now on, things are going to be different around here. Good. Hazel managed to gasp between sobs. And thank you for coming back. Molly and Rookie helped Hazel out of bed and ran her a bath. Then they left the room to investigate Gordon Boyle's. They found Gordon sitting in an armchair in Edna's room, wrapped in a quilt with his feet in a huge double slipper. Next to him, on a sofa, under 8 downs, there were 2 other big children, Cynthia and Craig. Their eyes were glued to the TV. When Rocky and Molly appeared, they had all looked up briefly, as if they had seen a couple flies, and then turned back to the TV. Gordon's face, which he held in his hand, was anemic, thinner, and less aggressive. Molly read his tattoos, King Gord, his fists read. There was nothing majestic about him now. Cynthia and Craig looked equally ghost-like and sad. Molly switched off the TV. Hello, you sorry lot. After Rocky had brought them all breakfast, Gordon talked. His voice was weak, and as he spoke, his eyes shifted about uneasily. He told them they'd been in a terrible black mood since the school term had ended. The only consolation had been the TV, and so they watched it nonstop. It's horrible here. We all feel sick, Gordon groaned. I feel like I'm sick right down to the core. Really, I think there's something wrong with me. Rocky, I think I need a doctor. Cynthia and Craig said nothing. Listen, said Molly. We'll help you get better on one condition. You have all got to change your ways. What do you mean? Asked Goblin feebly. You've got to stop being mean. Oh, that, said the downtrodden Gordon, whose eyes were soft and wet like a calf's now. Of course we can. I haven't bullied anyone for days. But how can you help us, Bog Eyes? I just will, said Molly. Wait and see. Oh, and by the way, I'm Molly. Molly Moon. Molly spoke firmly, but inside she was pleased that Cynthia had called her Bog Eyes. It showed that any adoration that Cynthia might have felt after Molly's hypnotism at the Blairsville Children's Talent Competition had worn off. As Gordon, Cynthia, and Craig left to have baths and get dressed, Molly wondered whether the 3 would be quite as agreeable when they were better again. We'll have to see, said Rocky. The last person to visit was Roger Fibbin, up in the sanatorium room. They found him sitting on the edge of the bed doing his shoelaces. Roger jumped with shock when he saw Molly and Rocky. His face was bonier than ever. His sharp nose was pink and dripping, and his hands were purple from the cold. His clothes were just as tidy as they had been before. But when he got closer, he noticed that his shirt had a brown dirt mark around the inside of the collar, and his gray trousers were stiff with grime. His fingernails were dirty with muck. What are you 2 doing here? He demanded, his left eye twitching. I'm off. Gotta go to check the garbage bins. He looked at a broken watch on his wrist. I'm late, and if I don't check them soon, they'll be emptied. After Molly and Rocky had calmed Roger down with some food, they noticed that he developed a foraging habit. He'd caught a few nasty stomach bugs, he said, but it was the easiest way of getting a varied diet. That, he said, half weeping, pointing to the empty plate, was the best food I've had in weeks. Don't worry, Roger. There will be lots of good food and things to eat from now on, Rocky assured him. And at these kind words, Roger flung his arms around Rocky's neck and broke down in tears. Wandering out of the sanatorium room, Molly caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror, the very mirror she had looked into and seen herself as a punk. She thought how different she looked like. Her hair was shinier, her face wasn't blotchy, her complexion was healthy. And as for her potato nose and her closely set green eyes, instead of seeing these features as ugly, Molly now liked them because they were hers. She had definitely changed since that November night when she stood on the hill hating her life and herself. Molly reflected upon how everyone at Hardwick House had changed since that time, and the changes had all happened because of Hypnotism, the book. Hazel, Roger, Gordon, Cynthia, and Craig had been humbled. Without the structure of school and rules, and by not having anything to fight against anymore, they'd fought one another and broken their alliances. With their gang smashed, they all had to stand alone. And when they had to face themselves, they didn't like what they found. Hazel had broken down so completely that she told the truth about herself. Molly knew she couldn't ever bully again, and she trusted Hazel had meant it when she said she wanted to be a better person. Molly wasn't so sure that Gordon, Cynthia, and Craig would change their ways. She couldn't imagine Gordon helping an old lady across the road, or Cynthia or Craig being kind. It would be hard work living with them. As for Roger, Molly was worried that the strain of the last few weeks had tipped him over in the edge into a sort of madness. She hoped he would recover. And then there was Knockman. He was definitely improving, becoming more considerate by the hour. Although he was still a bit of an experiment, Molly hoped he would be changed forever, as Petula had been. She was running around right now, as fit as a puppy. And Miss Adderstone and Edna? Molly didn't know what they were up to or where they were. She knew that the instructions she'd given them would wear off soon, but hoped that both of them would have discovered that they actually did love planes and flying and Italian cooking. And if these hobbies were new passions, they wouldn't come back to Hardwick House. Neither of them were children-loving types anyway. Molly had done them a huge favor by guiding them away from kids. Then Molly went downstairs to hide the hypnotism book where it has always been safe before her, under a mattress. And that is the end of the chapter. I'm not sure, but I think there's a bit of an instance of symbolism in this chapter too. When Molly goes to hide the hypnotism book under her mattress, that symbolizes that she's returning to her old life. But she's changed, as we know from the previous use of symbolism. She's changed, but she's back at Hardwick House. She's returning to her old life, but a different person. And I think that's pretty cool. Next opinions. Oh boy, oh my lord. Okay, well, I was wrong about the coma thing. But Roger Fibbin might have gone actually insane. That's crazy! What? Who would let that happen? Nobody saw the orphanage kid going around collecting trash. No one saw any of this happen. I understand that not too many people check up on the orphanage, but like if the milkman sees raw fish on the counter or outside, he's probably gonna look in the window and see all the horrid things inside. Man, he must just not be very observant. My prediction is that they're gonna hire Miss Trinkleberry back since, that's probably what they're gonna do.